You believe you know who you are. You call this certainty I. You refer to it when you speak, decide, remember, and plan. Yet when you look closely, this I never remains the same. Its opinions shift. Its moods change. Its sense of meaning evolves. Still, you continue to assume that something stable exists beneath these changes. Ibn Arabi questioned this assumption. He asked whether the self you defend is truly real, or whether it is only a collection of passing attributes. More radically, he proposed that what you actually are is not a person, not a story, and not a psychological structure. He suggested that beneath all change, there exists an awareness that cannot be damaged, altered, or divided. The question is simple, but unsettling. Is there something in you that cannot be broken? Ibn Arabi lived in a tradition that treated knowledge as direct inquiry rather than inherited belief. His work was not aimed at constructing theology. It was aimed at examining existence itself. He did not speak as a poet describing visions, but as a philosopher investigating the conditions of knowing. His central concern was the nature of reality and the nature of the one who knows it. For Ibn Arabi, spiritual inquiry was inseparable from rigorous reasoning. He approached consciousness as something that could be studied through careful observation of experience. This raises an important question. Are his ideas symbolic teachings or descriptions of something verifiable through inner examination? You usually define yourself through continuity. You believe you are the same person you were yesterday because you remember being that person. You believe you have a character because certain tendencies repeat. You believe you have an identity because others recognize you as someone. But each of these elements depends on change. Memory shifts. Personality adapts. Social roles transform. Even your deepest beliefs can reverse over time. If everything you use to define yourself is unstable, what exactly remains the same? You might say that change happens to you. But how do you know that? What is the you to which change occurs? Can something built entirely from movement be the foundation of identity? You notice thoughts. You notice emotions. You notice physical sensations. Each of these appears, exists for a time, and disappears. The important point is simple. They are known. Something registers them. Something is aware of them. Ibn Arabi emphasized this distinction. There is experience, and there is that which knows experience. Most people focus exclusively on what is known. Few investigate the knower. If thoughts are objects of awareness, then awareness itself cannot be a thought. If feelings are perceived, then awareness is not a feeling. This leads to a difficult question. Can the knower itself be known as an object, or must it be of a different order entirely? Anything you observe appears within awareness. You can observe a sensation. You can observe a memory. You can observe a belief. If you try to observe awareness itself, you encounter a logical problem. Whatever you observe becomes another object. But awareness is what allows observation to occur. If awareness were an object, something else would need to observe it. This would require another layer of awareness, and then another without end. Ibn Arabi used this reasoning to point toward a fundamental ground. There must be something that does not appear as an object, something that is self-evident. But how do you recognize what cannot be placed in front of you? You speak in terms of me and world. You assume there is an inside and an outside. You experience yourself as located somewhere, observing everything else. Ibn Arabi questioned this structure. He argued that separation arises through conceptual division, not through actual division. Language divides experience into parts. Thought labels and organizes. But labeling is not the same as splitting reality. If everything you know appears within the same field of awareness, then where exactly is the boundary? Is it discovered or is it assumed? This does not deny practical distinctions. It questions their ultimate status. Are you truly separate from what you experience, or is separation a habit of thought? Ibn Arabi did not claim that personal identity is useless. You function as a person. You respond as a person. Society operates through personal roles. But he rejected the idea that personality is what you fundamentally are. Personality is a pattern. Patterns change. They arise from conditions and dissolve when conditions shift. If you treat the pattern as absolute, you suffer when it changes. If you see it as functional, you can use it without clinging to it. The question then becomes clear. If identity is a structure that appears and disappears, what remains when you stop referring to that structure? To say that awareness cannot be broken does not mean that nothing hurts. It does not mean that difficult experiences disappear. It means something more precise. Loss occurs within awareness. Failure occurs within awareness. Psychological pain occurs within awareness. None of these affect the existence of awareness itself. They change the content, not the container. Ibn Arabi described this as the difference between form and reality. Forms arise and vanish. Reality remains. This does not create emotional immunity. It creates ontological clarity. The pain is real. The story about what the pain means may not be. Does recognizing this distinction alter how suffering is encountered? You can understand these ideas and still live as if they were false. You can repeat the words, "I am aware," while continuing to define yourself through thought. Ibn Arabi warned against confusing conceptual knowledge with realization. Conceptual knowledge is something you possess. Recognition is something you notice. You cannot manufacture recognition through effort. You cannot force yourself to be what you already are. The paradox is unavoidable. You seek what is already present. You look for what is doing the looking. At some point, the search collapses into a simpler observation. The question remains, are you willing to stop seeking long enough to notice? A common fear arises here. If there is no fixed self, does responsibility disappear? Ibn Arabi rejected this conclusion. Actions still occur. Choices still have consequences. Learning still happens. What disappears is the idea of a permanently defined owner of action. Responsibility becomes functional rather than personal. You respond to situations. You adjust behavior. You recognize errors and correct them. But you no longer build a rigid identity around success or failure. This does not weaken ethical life. It may simplify it. Action occurs because action is needed, not because an image must be defended. Can life operate without psychological ownership? You began with the assumption that you are a particular someone. You examined that assumption and found only change. You noticed that change is known. You questioned what it knows. Nothing dramatic was added. Nothing mystical appeared. The only shift was in orientation, from content to context, from object to knower, from story to awareness. Experiences continue. Personality continues. Thought continues. But none of these define what you are. If there is something in you that has never been absent, never been damaged, and never been improved, then perhaps the original question must be reconsidered. If what you truly are cannot be broken, what exactly have you been protecting all along?